Hello and welcome to the first installment of the Dyclif Dygest. Today's date is June 4th, 2015, as the time I'm recording this. And the Dyclif Dygest is basically a podcast based on basketball, soccer, and or football, and football. And I have to say that just as a forewarning that I will be saying soccer from now on. It's just based on the region that I live in. I can't control it. If it bothers you for some reason, then try to tune it out. I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to talk about what everyone wants to talk about, and that is the NBA Finals. Basically, I'm going to give you a preview, my prediction, and talk about a lot of other stuff basketball related for the first segment, soccer stuff related for the second segment, and football to end it out. So, if you're interested in a particular sport or topic, just skip right ahead to it. It should be in the description on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, and if it's on iTunes or any other outlet, then I really couldn't tell you what to do. So just try to gauge that to what you will. But okay, we have the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals, and personally, I think it's a lot closer than what people give it credit for. Like, a lot of people are saying Warriors in 5, 6, 7. I'm not hearing a lot of people saying Cavs, but at the same time, I'm not hearing people giving the Warriors credit enough. Like, I feel like the Warriors are maybe one of the top 10 NBA teams of all time this season. Like, you gotta look at the past. It's not every day someone wins 67 games and goes, I believe they were 39-2 on their home court. That's a little bit ridiculous. And I think that Cleveland was one of the teams to actually beat them on their home floor. I'm not exactly sure about that. It might only be Memphis and San Antonio, or Cleveland, San Antonio. I don't know. Either way, it's tough to beat this team at home, and when you take into consideration they have home court advantage for the whole playoffs, then I mean you kind of add 2 and 2 together, and well, you come up with them as the winner pretty much every single time. But it is possible for the Cavs to win because of one man, that's LeBron James. And when you take into consideration that LeBron James has been to 5 consecutive finals, it gets a little ridiculous. And that's including this year's finals. Just over the overall grand scheme of things, though, I'm going to say that the Warriors have the edge, but not by a whole lot. If the Cavs can sneak one out on the road, then that really, really gives them maybe even an advantage, because the Cavs have to take care of business at home, and I think that the energy that the fans in Cleveland are going to have it's going to be ridiculous. Like, taking into consideration they've only been to the finals with LeBron, but like a couple times before. So, I mean, I expect a ton of energy from that fan base, wanting to capture their first championship in the city's history since the 60s. It's something they've been striving for, and I think LeBron wouldn't want anything less. But either way, I think here's the weird part. Let's get into matchups. So we have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Harrison Barnes, Draymond Green, and Andrew Bogut as the probable starting lineup for the Warriors. And then for the Cavs, Kyrie. I mean, I would expect J.R. Smith maybe, but Shumpert might be there too. It just kind of depends on what they want to do with that shooting guard spot. LeBron, Tristan Thompson, and then Mozgov. And realistically, the Warriors have a stronger team, but I think if the Cavs can utilize some of the players they have, and if they play well enough, they can win this series. But I just don't see any way you can hide Kyrie defensively. Like, you have to put Kyrie on Steph Curry. There's no other way around it. You have to let those two go at each other, and that's all there is to it. You can't put Amon Shumpert on Curry unless Kyrie is out of the game, because Kyrie cannot guard the 6'7" frame of Klay Thompson, cannot guard Harrison Barnes, and then if you just try to go up from there, it's just a mismatch. And you surely, to goodness, cannot play a zone against the Warriors. That is not advised in the slightest bit. That is probably just stupid. So stupid it might just work, but probably not. But either way, I expect Steph to score a lot, and Kyrie has got to stay healthy and has got to put up points. That's the only way. Or actually play defense. Like, defense is a weakness of his. Like, just from a perspective of just viewing this as a basketball versus basketball mindset. I mean, some could say he's had improved defenses. I don't know. But from what I see, that's a weakness of his. And he certainly is going to be exploited against Steph Curry. Like, one of the best offensive talents the game's seen in the past couple of years. Like, it's crazy. Just add him to the list of great offensive talents, and he's there. But, yeah, Kyrie, I just don't see a way that he defends Steph Curry in this series. Like, it's not going to happen. Kyrie might have to be taken out at points. Like, it's almost weird because the absence of Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving didn't matter at all, it seemed like. It almost seemed like it helped them. Like, when you take into consideration they sweep the Hawks. The Hawks aren't a bad team at all. They had their injury problems too. Take into consideration Kyle Korver and Carroll, that really didn't help things. But either way, you don't have one of the best stretch fours in the game and rebounders, and you don't have a great offensive point guard with Kyrie and a good ball handling point guard. They still end up sweeping, and it's because of LeBron and then how others play around him. If you take a look at like the 2004 finals team with LeBron, it's not like he had a great supporting cast, but he had a decent one. If you strip away Kyrie and Kevin Love, he still has a pretty good supporting cast because he still has Tristan Thompson, who I've said is the greatest offensive rebounder today in the NBA, currently playing. Like, he just has a sense for the ball. He is a magnet. And I'm not saying as if the ball goes to him. I'm saying he's drawn to the ball so much. He is literally a magnet to whatever a basketball is made out of nowadays. But ultimately, this is going to be a really interesting series to see how different matchups unfold. We just touched base on Steph and Kyrie and what they have to do. Klay Thompson and J.R. Smith, both are going to line it up probably. I mean, it's probable. Because both of these teams are great three-point shooting teams. Two of the top three three-point shooting teams in the league make the NBA Finals. And it's for a good reason. You have two different ways. You have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and the entourage of three-point shooters on the Golden State Warriors and how they run their offense. And you have the Cavs who run their offense a little bit differently, where it has a dribble drive effect and LeBron gauges double teams and kicks out to the open man. And that's where they get most of their threes. This series is going to be about the three. It's going to be living and dying by the three. But ultimately, it's not going to be who makes those threes. It's more or less going to be who can defend the three better. And I see Golden State defending the three better simply because of their length. And really, they've had an underrated even knock them a little bit. Earlier in the year, I was looking at it, like, well, the West plays no defense. The whole conference of the West is based on fast pace, whereas the East is sort of a slow it down half court. And I don't know why that is. Like, you don't necessarily see a West Coast style in an East Coast team or an East Coast style in a West Coast team unless it's the Grizzlies. But I mean, really, I think to me, Memphis is in the eastern side of the United States. It doesn't really make sense to me. But either way, I guess if you consider that Western Conference, then they run sort of a Eastern Conference style. I don't know how it's gotten to be that way. That's a topic for another day. But either way, two different styles going at it. Although the Cavs have sort of adopted this sort of fast-paced play because they're an offensive team too, and they've had their struggles on defense, but they brought in help to address that. I just don't think it's going to be enough. Like, the Warriors are the team that they think they are, to put it bluntly. So, overall, my prediction is Warriors in 6. I just believe that the Cavs will give them somewhat of a fight, probably win 2 games, but when it's all said and done, I believe the Golden State Warriors will be the 2015 NBA champions. And unless something changes before game time, I'm sticking to it because, I mean, the Cavs do not have Kevin Love for the rest of the season. If they had him, it might be a little bit of a different story. That might be a game, Game 7, might go to Game 7, might cause all kinds of conundrums, and people start going crazy. And then you have the injury problem with Kyrie, and it's kind of weird because you really don't know what to expect from him this series, but it's the NBA Finals. You expect him, despite whatever pain might be going through his mind or body, he just needs to play because this is his very first NBA Finals, and you could say that for a lot of players on a lot of these teams, and even the coaching staff. I didn't even mention the coaching staff yet. You have Steve Kerr and David Blatt, who are rookie coaches, their first year in the league ever coaching. Now, they've been around the basketball scene before and have seen, done, and participated in some of the greater things on the basketball side. Mostly speaking with Steve Kerr here, because Blatt was overseas, but still, Blatt has definitely proved that he can coach the Cavs in a good way. Like, earlier in the year, when they were 19-20 at one point, it kind of looked like everything was going downhill for the Cavs, and then all of a sudden it sort of clicked. I think it was more or less just trying to get used to a new system, but on the other hand, you have the Warriors who have been consistent all year long, and Steve Kerr, who's been out of his mind. I gave the Warriors a lot of flack for getting rid of Mark Jackson because Steve Kerr wasn't a surefire thing, but they ended up getting Steve Kerr, and look at what they've done. 67 wins in the West. Like, think of the competition they're playing against. Think about how that makes them better. And just think of the overall scenario. I think the Warriors in 6. Like, it's kind of weird because anything can happen. Like, I don't think a sweep's going to happen either way. Like, I would bet against a sweep. Like, you got to think the Cavs are going to get a game. But I can see different scenarios happen. We have the Warriors in 5, 6, or 7, or the Cavs in 7. I don't know about the Cavs in 6. Like, that just... I just don't know about it. I'm going to say Warriors in 6, stick with a solid, firm pick. Now, of course, that's not what I want to happen. I want to see this go 7 games. I mean, personally, I'm not rooting for or against one or the other. I just want to see some good basketball. That's all I've ever wanted to see, and that's all I ever will want to see is good basketball, and I think we are due for it right now. It's going to happen. There's going to be some good basketball played in this series. And here's hoping the 7 games to prolong the NBA season as long as possible so we don't have to wait as long until it begins next year. Well, this year, you get the picture, next season. So now moving on to some other news in the NBA, we have some head coaching hirings around the league. We have Alvin Gentry to the Pelicans and Fred Hoiberg to the Bulls. Start with Alvin Gentry. I believe this was a decent hire by the Pelicans. Monty Williams did okay in his tenure with the New Orleans Pelicans, but all in all, I just don't think it was going in a direction that they wanted to see or the fans wanted to see, and they had to basically cut ties with him. And I think Alvin Gentry has proven that he can exist in this league as a head coach. And the reason being is because you look at the Suns team that he had. I really like that style that he implemented in that system. It just seems as though, like, every single time that he has coached a team, he's coached them for a very short period of time, and the team doesn't really give him a chance to run. Like, it's always restricted by the GM or a higher above power that sort of controls the coaching staff. I think with how young the Pelicans are and their promising future with one of the best players in the league, he has the potential to really create something here, and I'm very interested to see how he can change the Pelicans offensively. We all know that the Pelicans will thrive defensively because of Anthony Davis, who I believe will win multiple Defensive Player of the Years in his time. So, overall, I think it was a decent hire, decent fit to address a problem. I don't know how long his tenure is going to last with New Orleans. It seems like head coaches are sort of just thrown around because here's the thing. You have like different sort of looks to NBA coaches. You have like the guy that's going to teach and really get into his players but not really have like an X's and O's mindset. Then you have the guy who actually has the X's and O's, and then you have like other different styles. And different teams want to bring in different styles for different times, if that makes sense. It's beginning to get to a point where they don't want to stick with one person. It's kind of like the head coaching staff they want is based year to year. Whereas I think this problem can be addressed by getting the head coach that you want. What's your main emphasis? Stick with him for a while. Get an assistant coach that can do the other stuff that I mentioned. And then so on and so forth. Like, it's almost like a team effort coaching-wise. You can't just have one coach that does this. You have to have multiple coaches that addresses different areas, and I think that's where the league's kind of missing out. That's just my personal opinion. And it's almost as if head coaches do matter. I don't think you can really say head coaching doesn't matter. Like, it has to matter. There has to be something that needs to be said, some sort of system that has to be in place. If head coaching doesn't matter, then I don't know how the Spurs win as many championships as they do. I think head coaching matters. And back to just the NBA Finals real quick. I think Steve Kerr will outcoach David Blatt in this series because Blatt is more of a rookie to the NBA than Steve Kerr is. Steve Kerr's been around the block. He's been commentating. He's played for the Chicago Bulls for championship teams. He knows what's up. He knows all the sides to the NBA. And that's something that you need to take into consideration when hiring a head coach. Like, how do they know the NBA? They know it as a player, they know it as a coach, they know it as a commentator, an analyst, a sideline reporter, or just a sideline watcher, a fan. And Steve Kerr knows the game. But back to the hirings. We'll move on to Fred Hoiberg and the Bulls. Personally, it's just, this is rough, okay? You have, for Tom Thibodeau, he's had ties back to the Celtics as an assistant, did very well for them, moved on to the Bulls, and had a great tenure in Chicago, one of the winningest head coaches in the past 5 years. He's had to deal with the injuries of Derrick Rose and the coming and going of Carlos Boozer, implementing Pau Gasol offensively, and Mirotic. Now, you can't give Thibodeau all the credit, but I will give him most of the credit because you have Pau Gasol who was a signing just out of the blue. And, well, not really out of the blue, but you get the picture. Like, he's been a Laker his whole career besides being a Grizzly early. And all of a sudden he goes to Chicago, and he has this almost rebirth, a renaissance in Chicago. He just flourishes in a system ran by Tom Thibodeau. It's crazy because you look at Tom Thibodeau, and he's to his credit, he's great defensively, one of the best defensive-minded coaches there is, like, period. But offensively, I think that's a struggle. I just don't see a fluent offensive system ran there. But Pau Gasol found a way to sort of coexist with what Thibodeau wanted to do and this offensive system. Like, it somehow worked. And I think if they just gave Thibodeau another year and let free agency play its role and try to get a good shooting guard or small forward like Wes Matthews, then I think this team could easily compete for a championship. Also, you got to take into consideration Carmelo Anthony could have went to the Chicago Bulls. If Carmelo went to the Bulls, that would be a different offensive system, and I think they would have to be the favorite in the East with Melo, Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Jimmy Butler. Like, that's ridiculous. Come on. Either way, they got rid of him. They hired Fred Hoiberg. I was young when Fred Hoiberg coached in the NBA and played in the NBA, but he sort of knows the system. He's been coaching at Iowa State, I believe, for 2 years. I could be wrong. Could just be a year. It seems like 2. But nevertheless, I just don't think this should have happened. Should have happened. Or however you word that. That's a weird phrase. Either way, I just don't know. It's a tough call. Because you want to move forward, and the Bulls really haven't been moving forward. But how... It goes back to this George Karl thing. The Denver Nuggets fired Coach of the Year. Like, how? How do you do that? How do you fire a guy that is literally the best coach in basketball according to the award? Like, that just doesn't make a lick of sense. And I will continue to rant on that for days. But it goes back to the same thing. Thibodeau was one of the top, maybe 5 coaches, top 7. It just kind of depends on where you rank coaches and your mindset of what a coach should be. To me, Thibodeau's top 5. To you, I don't know. Could be top 10. He might fall out of the top 30 in your opinion. But in my personal opinion, and what I want to see in a coach, he's top 5. And I just think it was a bad fire, not a bad hire. And that's what I'll say about that. To finish off NBA talk, I have my 2015 mock draft in order, 1 from 30. It is a pretty long list. Like, it's basically addressed on team needs. And, like, a mock draft is never going to be perfect. Like, it's never going to happen. It's like, you can't just predict what's going to happen. Like, it's impossible. But either way, I like to entertain the idea that I like to know what's going on, even though I don't. So, with the first pick of the draft, I have Karl Anthony Towns going to Minnesota. I just believe that he's going to blossom into a star. I've watched some of his Draft Express workout footage, and he's really expanded his game from the perimeter, and he's getting stronger, just becoming better in every facet of the game. And I think that he might be the number 1 pick. It's been between him and Okafor. You basically coin flip that. But to me, you have the Timberwolves who already have Pekovic, and really I don't know what they'd do with Pekovic if they drafted Okafor. But if Towns goes number 1 overall and plays that power forward spot for Minnesota, then I think they really have a system there. I mean, you have Levee and Wiggins, and then you sort of have this big three, and I really see Minnesota sort of looking on the up and up. And it's more the style they want to run. Minnesota has like an athletic style, and I really believe that that's what Towns will fit into best. Like, if you draft Okafor, it's more of a half court, dump it down low, let him operate. Towns is more, I'm all over the court doing my thing. Like, it's kind of ridiculous because he's getting better in the low post. I just think he's the number one pick. I think he fits into that system better, whereas I have Okafor going number 2 to the Lakers. And I'll try to make this quick, like, to where it's not much of a decision. I'll just say this, that, or this. Okafor, I think, is the sure pick for the future for the Lakers. He might not be an immediate impact, although he probably will be good for, 14, 15 points, and then maybe getting close to 8 or 9 boards a game. It just kind of depends. You can't really gauge that, but as a rookie, sort of getting used to everything, I don't know how the Lakers are going to be. I really don't know what the Lakers are trying to do, to be honest with you. It's like they want to win a championship for Kobe, and they want to rebuild at the same time. And until they decide one or the two, it's going to be an up-in-the-air season, and I don't know. They don't know what they want to do, so they don't know what the result's going to be. So, Okafor, I pretty much don't need to say anything about him other than the fact that he can score in the low post. And the Lakers need to pick him. There's no question about it. So, third, Philadelphia, which I'm glad Philadelphia got the third pick, because if they got one of the first two and they picked Towns or Okafor, then I honestly don't know what to tell you. They have Nerlens Noel and Embiid. Come on, people. Do you really need another center to add to that roster? Either way, I think they're picking D'Angelo Russell here. You could entertain the idea of Moutier, but they recently had Michael Carter-Williams, who was a 6'6" point guard, and Moutier, also 6'6" and can play the point guard position. I don't think there's much of a difference. I think they go with sort of a scoring threat here with D'Angelo Russell. Now, at number 4, I have the Knicks selecting Moutier because I think that he's a top 4 pick. Those are the top 4. I just don't know which order necessarily Russell and Moutier is going in for sure. But I do see the Knicks picking Moutier here just to sort of fit that role that they need. They don't really have a point guard or shooting guard that... Well, really, they blew up the whole roster, so I don't know what exactly their plan is. But Moutier is a good start. At number 5, we have the Orlando Magic, and I have them picking Justice Winslow as sort of a stretch pick. I know that he's more on most mock drafts going 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. But I think Winslow is a pretty good small forward to add to that roster of already athletic people. You have Elfrid Payton, Aaron Gordon, Victor Oladipo. I think he fits in with that athletic mindset. Now, they could easily go someone else, but I think Justin Winslow is a good fit because they have Vucevic. I think it's a position they need to address too. So Winslow, I think, is a safe pick, and it's sometimes safe picks pays off, and I think it will pay off if the Magic decide to draft Winslow. At number 6, I don't know much about him, but for the Sacramento Kings, I have Kristaps Porzingis. And really the only reason I have him going to the Kings is because, one, the Kings are kind of known for... Not really, but, I can see them taking a foreigner. And then number 2, Vlade Divac has some influence in that pick. And Kristaps Porzingis just sounds like a Sacramento King. It's just one of those situations that doesn't make any sense to me, but it's just one of those things you picture in your head. It's like he's going there no matter what, and I have that later on down the list. For number 7, I have the Denver Nuggets selecting Willie Cauley-Stein, Willie Trill Cauley-Stein, as he recently changed his name, which is awesome. But just the sort of athletic theme they have going. They have Kenneth Faried. It's really hard to tell what they're going to do with the roster, but I think a safe bet is a guy who can run the floor at the center position and really just play defense for you. Like, just be the man in the middle to protect the paint, run the floor, lobs. You utilize the high altitude in Denver to your advantage. And I think Willie Cauley-Stein is the best pick you can make here for Denver. So I can see him going to Denver. At number 8, we have Stanley Johnson to the Detroit Pistons. It's another one of those things that just makes sense for me. And you have can't even remember his name, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who from the beginning I said there's no way this is going to pan out for Detroit. Like, this is not a good selection. Like, it's nothing against Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I think he's a decent player, but I think that's just I just don't know why he was that high on the draft board. It's kind of weird. Like, I guess people really want to see these two-way guards and these two-way players at the wing position sort of flourish, and I just don't see it. I mean, I just don't know what to tell you. But I think Stanley Johnson, if Detroit picks him, will work out in their system. It's sort of a hometown connection. Not, kind of, but I think it needs to be done. The Pistons passed on Trey Burke, and they can't pass on Stanley Johnson. At number 9, we have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Frank Kaminsky. Really, if you look, I'm trying to just be civil about this and try to be honest. Let's be honest. So far, the Cody Zeller pick has not worked out for them. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at the number 2 pick hasn't really worked out for them, although he's provided a good defensive role at that small forward position. It just doesn't seem as though they're really in position to select anybody that is really over the top, hands down good. Like, they always somehow get in a draft to where they just don't select the best player available. Like, they've made the mistake with Adam Morrison, and yes, that's the Bobcats, but still, same principle, Charlotte here. I'm not exactly sure this is the safe pick either. Like, I don't know how good of a pro Kaminsky will be, but really, you've got to address the problem at the center position, because Al Jefferson, I think, will probably leave unless you pay him a lot. And you can't really pay the man a lot because that'll deter you down the road from signing other players. I think, really, you got to try out Frank Kaminsky and just see what you get out of him. Because I don't know what exactly Charlotte plans to do. They could easily go with Mario Hezonja. I just don't know. But I have them picking Frank Kaminsky because that's a problem that will probably need addressed. He can play the power forward position too. And really, Noah Vonleh, Cody Zeller, not knocking Indiana players here, but they haven't really lived up to their expectations so far. So far. They could very well go on to be great pros, but at the moment, they don't really fit into the NBA system of Charlotte. But moving on, we have Miami selecting Trey Lyles, a pretty diverse player when you think about it. He can play the 3 or the 4, and I just think with Luol Deng possibly on his way out with Miami, it kind of makes sense to get Trey Lyles who could play the 3 or the 4, so that Bosch could play the 4 or the 5. You get a sort of a diverse player set there, and I think that's a good step for Miami. At number 11, we have the Indiana Pacers selecting Miles Turner. Basically, I see them selecting Turner simply because they just need a low post scoring presence, and I think Turner might fulfill that in the future. Number 12, we have Utah Jazz selecting Devin Booker. Basically, the shooting guard position is a position that needs to be addressed for Utah. I think Booker is a great fit. He can get out and run in transition, whether that be for three or attacking the basket. He can grow defensively. He's kind of like a Klay Thompson type. So I think the Jazz really need some outside scoring. Along with Gordon Hayward, I think Devin Booker would play great alongside of him, and it's a good pick. For 13, I have the Phoenix Suns selecting Sam Dekker. And really, I just think he's going to be a pretty good defensive small forward and can do other things on offense as well. Like I don't know if he's one of those players that I could see staying in the league. It's weird because he's either going to really, really prosper or he's going to sort of dip off and we're not going to hear his name. Like it's either one or the other. It's on his shoulders. But I think personally, defense will keep you in this league, and he can play defense, and he can also shoot the ball. So I think it would be a good pick. And then I have Mario Hezonja at number 14 going to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Basically, I can't really gauge these foreign players that well. I think he's going to fall simply because people don't want to take the risk involved with foreign players in the past. It's either they really work for you or they don't at all. There's really no in between. But I think it'll be overall sort of a gamble by Oklahoma City, but we'll see if it pays off. I don't know much about him, but I kind of expect him to go in the lottery. So that's just my mock draft lottery for the NBA. And we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll talk about college basketball. And welcome back to the Dyclif Dygest. We'll pick up with college basketball, and the first topic on my list that I have is basically just a recruiting recap. This has been one of the sort of weirdest recruiting classes I've seen in a while. You have people going every which way to every possible pipeline in the United States. Like it's weird. Let's start out by saying that I believe that this class has a lot of talent and a lot of decisions that were made were just kind of all over. You have some people wanting to stay home. You have some people wanting to start a legacy somewhere, and then others kind of joining in. You have, I don't even know. Like this is intense. Let's get started. We got to start somewhere. Let's start with LSU, with Ben Simmons. He is a very versatile player, and I think he can make a definite impact there. And along with Brandon Sampson, who is signed with LSU as sort of a shooting guard, there's a new system in LSU, and this is what I like. I'm going to talk about this later, but the SEC is getting a lot stronger. And I'll talk about that for the next topic, but LSU is certainly, they've been an up and down program. Like, it's either they get a wave of talent and they're good for 2 or 3 years and then they just sort of decline. You saw it with Shaq, you saw it with Tyrus Thomas, and now with Ben Simmons. It's sort of a new era, if you will. Like, it's going to be really interesting to see everyone play and see how they do. Like, it's almost like, in comparison to the NBA in the early thousands, or whatever you want to call it. Like in 2001, 2, 3, you had people like sticking with one team and really seeing what they could do with that one team around them. Like, you sort of had that with Ben Simmons. Kentucky's kind of a different story, more or less just reloading on talent and seeing what happens. Then you have Duke kind of doing the same thing. You have Jaylen Brown and Ivan Rabb to California. Should be interesting to see that duo sort of play. You have Henry Ellenson, who I haven't heard much about, to be honest, but he's number 5 on the 2015 recruiting list. So he went to Marquette. And then you have Maryland, who is right now tied with 7-1 odds with Kentucky and Duke to win the 2016 national championship. Like Maryland out of nowhere. And then you have Kansas, who's got another solid, they always have a solid roster. Caleb Schwannigan trying to prove his point in Purdue. He did commit to Michigan State, which I thought would have been a better fit, personally. But I see Purdue making the tournament now. Like, that's a thing. Purdue will probably make the tournament based on this one signing. You have Mississippi State coming up the ranks with Malik Newman. It's just, I mean, Zimmerman with UNLV. You add Antonio Blakeney to LSU. Forgot to mention him. There's just a long list of players going every which way, and it's really gonna be an interesting season. Personally, college basketball is like my favorite thing, like possibly ever. Just the tradition, the experiences you can have, like the theme, like it's just a college atmosphere. That's the word I'm looking for. The atmosphere is just different, and it's awesome. It really is something, and really when you look at it, like the strength of the SEC this year, like it's going to be something to watch. Like I personally believe that the SEC might be the best conference. And, you know, it's been considered weak for a while. With the recent hirings of Avery Johnson, you have Rick Barnes going to Tennessee, trying to restart that program. Bruce Pearl at Auburn. You have LSU coming up the ranks, Mississippi State with Malik Newman, Kentucky basically being the face of the SEC on a frequent basis. And, I mean, that list sort of goes on. You have Florida trying to sort of rebuild what Billy Donovan left behind. There's so many interesting storylines in the SEC and so many interesting players, coaches, and teams. And I think that it's really going to be a tough conference. There's going to be no joking around. This is going to be a good year for college basketball, and I can't wait. So let's go ahead and move on to the next topic I want to talk about, and that is the new rule changes that are sort of taking place in college basketball. It seems like to me that I don't know all the rules that have been changed, but I'll just name like some of the bigger ones so that we can just get through this a little bit quicker. Basically, I like the idea of a 30-second shot clock. At first, I didn't think it was that good of an idea, but then you have people saying like, well, women's has been playing with 30 and it hasn't hurt their game, and then you have the NBA with 24. To me, it really doesn't matter. Like, what is 5 seconds really going to do? I mean, it will speed up the game a little bit. Sets might have to be changed, like different offensive sets. But all in all, I think it's a good change. 30 will be a good change. And then you have sort of a different concept of what a foul is. You know, like it's always tough. Like, it's based on the referee. Like, I don't think that rule can really be enforced. Like, call this at this moment. Like, put two hands on someone, it's an automatic foul. It to me, it's just what the referee decides. Like, they are sort of the judges to a basketball game, like a judge is to a courtroom. Like, they decide in final what this should be, what punishment, I guess you could say, like a foul as a punishment, should be enforced. Like, what this is to that. Like, it's kind of hard to explain, because it's basically just what they feel like is best to call in those situations. And personally, I don't think referees get as much credit as they deserve. Like, really, 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 I want to emphasize that they have to call this game, whatever the game may be, just a game, at full speed and unbiasedly. Like, they have to sort of make a decision on the spot, stick to it, and really focus on what they need to call. I'm probably not making a lick of sense right now, but I'm just trying to sort of give you a picture to what they have to deal with. So they have to deal with a lot. They have to deal with the fans booing them, or in the rare case, cheering them for helping their team somehow. Overall, I just don't think they get enough respect, and you can't really tell them how to referee a game. Like, that will be based on them. But something I do want to see is less replay reviews. I think they can really cut down on that. Last 2 minutes, fine. Like, that's fine. You need to make those crucial calls, but leave it to the human eye for the most part. That's just what I'm going to say about that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about soccer / football, whatever you want to call it. Hello and welcome back to the Dyclif Dygest. We're going to dive right into soccer. And for the first little bit, I just want to talk about college soccer, high school soccer, basically just the growth of soccer in general in the United States. You don't really see soccer as like a big college sport yet, or even high school. It's kind of weird because I don't think it's as big as I want to see it be in the United States. Because if you look at like the major sports, soccer is played around the world. You have basketball, which is now becoming played around the world. Football, which really has only expanded to North America, to say the least. But basically, the three biggest sports, or my three favorite sports, are basketball, soccer, and football. And basketball and football have a good college following. There's a lot of people that want to see it. Personally, I would like to see college soccer televised more. Like, if we get this out there, then it becomes a more popular thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I can see the growth slowly happening. Like, the MLS is slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, soccer will be the next basketball, football on this list. Like, it's going to happen eventually. I just don't know when. It could take 5 to 10 years. It could take 15. But I really do see a growth here with the World Cup. It's starting to connect with more people. It's starting to become it's an affordable sport to play, first off. It's like you just knee pads, cleats, soccer ball, soccer goal, field. Those are the necessities. And, of course, legs. That's another necessity. But I can see it growing, and that's that. I'll leave that topic for a later day. I just feel like it needed to be slightly addressed. But now moving on to the soccer headline. Sepp Blatter has stepped down as FIFA president. And, you know, there's been talks of corruption with FIFA for multiple things. You have Qatar in 2022 with the World Cup. You have possible match fixings with referees. I don't know, just up and down the board. And all in all, when those things happen, the president is looked at. It's like, you've got to do something about this. Now, to whether or not Sepp Blatter has done anything wrong is under investigation. But to me, like, him stepping down kind of tells me the story that I need to know. Like, he doesn't want to deal with this anymore. He doesn't want to be looked at and be hated. Because to him, it's like, would you rather stay with the job and then possibly get impeached, or whatever procedure is taking place to where he is sort of ran out of his presidency as FIFA? or do you just resign now? It's kind of like a Richard Nixon Watergate scenario, but really, I think it just needed to happen. So you don't want to really take shots at a guy, but you need someone with more integrity for the game. And that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say Sepp Blatter is this or that. To me, just from the outside looking in, that's what it looks like. But I could very well be wrong, as many people could be wrong, but it's just one of those situations. Moving on, let's talk about Champions League play here. We have Barcelona and Juventus squaring off in the Champions League final. A lot of people wanted to see Barcelona and Real Madrid. Others thought that we've already seen enough of that in Liga BBVA. Why not mix it up a bit? To me, personally, Barcelona is my favorite team, and then Juventus is probably right behind Barcelona. So it's kind of like this interesting thing where I'm really not going to care who wins, but I would like to see Barcelona win. This would just be another spectacular thing Messi does if he can pull this off. And taking into consideration last year was a very good Champions League with Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, also in Liga BBVA. And that was a very fun one to watch. I just want this one to be a fun one to watch. I mean, there's been reports that Giorgio Chiellini will not play. And I think that will be pretty huge if you take that in consideration, because you have sort of Luis Suarez Chiellini sort of mix-up scenario there. You know, like you have the bye during the World Cup with Uruguay and Italy. But beyond that, you're missing one of your best defensive players and one of the best catalysts that you have on your team for Juventus. And it's going to be rough to fulfill those shoes that won't be there. But I bet these two teams have been just watching each other's film attentively. This is huge. I think this is going to be the most watched Champions League final in the history of Champions League play. Maybe even one match. It's going to be huge. And it needs to be exciting. You know what I mean? There's so much pressure on the game to be exciting nowadays. It's something else. But ultimately, it's going to be a good game to watch. And either way, either result, I think it needs to be a good growth for the sport in the United States. Obviously, if you're watching this in England or especially in Europe, because it's big in Europe, Africa, other continents, you know how big this game is already. You know the process of its growth, but in the United States, it's a little bit different. We watch this as not that big of a sport. It's a big deal everywhere else. And I get that. College basketball is a big deal for me, personally. So, soccer's a big deal for everyone else. It's just something to watch. It's something great to watch, and I think it will be nice. Now, my prediction for it, I haven't really thought too much about it, to be honest with you, but I will say 3-1 Barcelona. I think Messi, Neymar scores a couple, and, Messi with 2, Neymar with 1. And we'll just go ahead and say Tevez with 1 for Juventus. It'll be an interesting game to see, and we'll leave it at that. So, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about football, and then we'll call it a show. Hello, welcome back to the Dyclif Dygest. We're going to dive right into the overall success of the college football playoffs. It's weird to think about, because if they had just stuck with the normal bowl game, the BCS National Championship game, Ohio State would not be playing in that. We would have a different national champion. and a different result, a completely different result. And I think it was a success because you had this sort of randomness that you need to make it exciting. Like, you look at March Madness, and there's a reason why they call it madness, because it is just this flurry and just ridiculous thing that happens yearly that people just love. And college football finally got their taste of it, and to whether or not they expand it to 8 in the future or even more is kind of up for debate. I think 4 is decent, but 8 would be pretty good in my personal opinion. But for right now, I kind of like it because it kind of rewards like the 4 best teams. It's like, you 4 are clearly the best. Like, now people are going to say, like, well, the teams that are like 5th and 6th could have been 4th easily, 3rd or 4th. Granted, that's why there probably should be 8, but one of the 4 to say should win it all. Like, the top 4 teams should win it all, and if you don't like it, play better. That's the way it's kind of been in the past, but now there's less of it, so there's less complaining to do. And really, how much complaining have you heard from like the 5th and 6th numbered team? Like, you don't really see it. So to me, this is working. Like, this is a thing that should continue, and it's exciting to see. Like, it's exciting to see these playoffs happen because it expands what could happen in a game. Like, there's so many different combinations that could happen, and that's just my thought on that. It's definitely been a success so far, and I wouldn't be surprised if it expanded even more. So next up, we have sort of a rumor that has picked back up again after a decline. It's Braxton Miller possibly leaving Ohio State. And, you know, personally, I don't know that much about Braxton Miller other than the fact that, you know, he's sort of an Ohio guy. And I don't see him leaving necessarily. Like, it's been rumored for a while, but ultimately, when you have a chance to play on a national championship team, like, he kind of missed out on it, right? You know, Ohio State made that run not necessarily with their 2 best QBs. They had a 3rd-string QB in to win a national championship. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. But now you don't know what expectations are. Like, who gets to start week 1? That's why there's possibilities of Braxton Miller leaving. But I think you can't refuse the possibility of winning a national championship with the team that you've been at. You know, first year Braxton Miller was there. He was close. Ohio State was a top 5 team. He was close to getting that BCS National Championship bowl game. Second year, because of a violation or something along those lines, Ohio State was penalized, and they could not participate in a bowl game, and they went undefeated. Like, third year, Braxton Miller gets injured early in the season. Well, not really early, but early/midway point, probably like 35% of the way through the season, something like that. Doesn't get to complete the season. Actually, it could have been sooner than that, as I recall. But either way, doesn't get to complete his season and misses out on them winning a national championship. So now he gets the chance to really show that he can lead this team to victory. And you know what? It's going to be QB controversy for Ohio State this whole season. That's what's going to be talked about. We're going to see it. But I think Braxton Miller gets the start and leads this team to whatever his legacy is at Ohio State. We'll see. Next up, we go to the NFL. We have just my personal overall opinion on Winston and Mariota. I'm going to keep this kind of brief because I'll mainly talk about this for another day. But Jameis Winston and Mariota is sort of like the in-between version of past draft class. Because we have Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, who are pretty special quarterbacks. RG3's kind of got to deal with an injury problem, get back to his rookie self. And then you have Geno Smith and EJ Manuel. And then you have Winston and Mariota. So what I think is going to happen and how they're going to play out is they will be somewhere in between Andrew Luck and Geno Smith. Like, they'll be mediocre quarterbacks. I don't really see special out of them necessarily, but I do see how they can be utilized and how they can be starters in this league. And, I mean, we're just going to have to see what's going to happen because at this point you really don't know with quarterbacks. It's either really a star or bust. It's hard to say. But now we have... I was going to talk about the Eagles and their whole situation, but I want to just talk about one minor thing that I see. And I see Nick Foles and the Rams. Like, what will the Rams be this season? Personally, I think Nick Foles is going to flourish with the St. Louis Rams. The Rams are going to give him the keys to that offense and say, let's go, you're it. The Rams have a terrific defense. They have, you always say like top 5, top 10. They really do have like a top 7 defense in the league, like any given time. Now you add one of the best QBs in terms of turnover ratio as your starter, and you have these new targets that you can throw to, and you have this new offense. Like it's going to be interesting to see because new offenses typically do good because defenses haven't found a way to diffuse that offense. It normally takes them a while to snap on. So I think the Rams could very well make the playoffs this year. But it's hard to say in the end. Nick Foles will be a catalyst in that offense, though. I believe it. Last thing I wanted to talk about today is the Phillip Rivers feud with San Diego. Like, there's been reports that he's unhappy. There's been reports that he wants to leave. There's been reports of possibly, that trade with the Titans for Mariota. All in all, I just don't necessarily see him leaving. Really, period. I see him finishing his career with San Diego. He had a heck of a season last year. Pretty good offense around him. San Diego's defense is really the only thing that needs improving. Like, it's so weird with NFL teams because it's more or less who gets hot at the right times. And Phillip Rivers has been hot for the past few seasons. Like, past 2 years, he's sort of revitalized his career. And really, though, take in consideration that the center for the San Diego Chargers, I think it's Hardwick, he's been friends with Hardwick for as long as I can remember. Like, that, you just don't say no to friendship, That has to play a part in his decision to stay. So, I don't think he's going to retire this season. He probably won't even retire next season. I just like, I've had Phillip Rivers in a fantasy. He's done well for me past couple seasons. And I don't see any hatred to the organization. Like, I see him really being enthusiastic for playing for the Chargers. Like, he really likes it there. That's just what it looks like from the outside for me. So I don't see him leaving. I don't see a problem. I see him continuing to play the way he's played in the past. So that's that. And that's going to be it for the show. I hope everyone enjoyed that was listening, and hopefully I'll be able to continue the show on a frequent basis. So that's been it for the Dyclif Dygest. I will talk to you all later.